Seches Chagiga Daf Chav Zayin is the last daf in the Masechta. It is a short daf, and therefore we're going to begin with the last third of Daf Chavav. We've been discussing the Shulchan. The Gemara has seen in the Mishnah that a Shulchan, the Shulchan which was in the Beis Hamikdash, is susceptible to Tumah. That's why we had to warn the Amaratsim not to touch it and not to be Metameit. So Gemara wants to know why was it susceptible to Tumah. And the Gemara explained because it's movable. If it would be an unmovable kli, it would not be susceptible to tumah. So now the Gemara asks, what about the fact that it's plated? You don't need to tell me that the reason why it is susceptible to tumah is because it's movable. Even if it was unmovable, a metal kli, which is unmovable, is mekabel tumah, and this kli was plated with metal, it was plated with gold. Now, how do you see, though, that plating counts? Plating defines the type of kli that it is. Maybe it's still viewed as a wooden kli, not as a metal kli. So Gemara says, I'll bring you a brisa that shows that we follow the plating as far as what the halacha is. The brisa says, it quotes from Yehuda, and the Chachamim discussing what happens if you have a table or a chair that you plate with stone, you plate with marble. Now, marble is not mekabel tumah. Another thing, what happens if part of the table or the chair disappears? It gets ruined. So the table or the chair is generally mekabel tumah. If it gets partially ruined, or if it's plated with stone, it's not mekabel tumah anymore. Now, the machlokes of Yehuda and the Chachamim is how much of the table and the chair have to be left there, unplated, in order for it to be still considered a functional table and chair. So the Chachamim say it has to be large enough to hold cups, and Yehuda says it has to be large enough to hold portions of meat or food. Whatever the halacha will be there, we still see that the plating counts, and we define the table by its stone plating. So that's a kula. There we're leniently defining the table based on its plating. In our case, where we have the shulchan that's plated with gold, certainly l'chumra, to go strictly, we should define it by its plating. We should say that it's mekabel tumah because of the gold plating. Why again do we have to say that? It's because it's movable. So Gemara therefore wants to say two potential answers. First of all, Gemara wants to say maybe it's because the mizbeach, the shulchan, was made out of atzei shitim, very high quality wood. Maybe high quality wood like that doesn't become a batal based on a plating. The case you brought me, that was cheap wood. So Gemara says that would not fit according to the opinion of Rav Yochanan. So machlokes Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan, what type of wood are we talking about in that case? Reish Lakish says it's only referring to cheaper wood like achsalgim. Rav Yochanan says it's even referring to expensive wood like misamim. It makes no difference. So therefore, according to the opinion of Rav Yochanan, even asay shitim should be batel to the plating, and therefore we should again use the explanation that it's mekabel tumah because of its gold plating. So Gemara says maybe give you a different answer. Maybe it's because the plating wasn't fixed firmly. And if the plating is not fixed firmly, it doesn't define the kli. That's what happened in the shulchan. So Gemara says, but again we have a discussion between Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan, where Reish Lakish asks Rav Yochanan, what is the story if it's not fixed firmly or if it doesn't cover the lip? And Rav Yochanan said it doesn't matter. Either way, it's defined by the plating. So again, according to Rav Yochanan, we don't have a solution for why we could not just say that the shulchan is mekabel tumah because of its plating. So the Gemara says that the answer will be because the Torah calls the shulchan a wooden kli. You cannot tell me that it's counted as a gold kli because of its plating. It's defined as wood. Where do you see that? Well, it's a pasuk in Yecheskel. It says hamazbeach eitz shalosh amos gavoha v'arko shtayim avos mikzaosav lo v'arko v'girosav eitz v'yadaber elai zeh hashulchan asher lifnei Hashem. So you see, it calls it eitz, and then it says zeh hashulchan. So it's called that it's wood, and it's the shulchan. So therefore, the shulchan is called a kli of wood. You cannot define it by its gold plating. Okay, the Gemara accepts an answer. The Gemara just points out that this pasuk started off talking about the mizbeach and then ended off talking about the shulchan. What are we talking about? The mizbeach and the shulchan. The Gemara says we're talking about the shulchan, and it means to tell you that the mizbeach and our table are similar. In the times that we have a mizbeach, it is mechaper, it brings atonement for people by bringing karbanos. Once the Beis Hamikdash is taken away, your table atones for you. That's like your karbanos. Rashi says because you host guests at your table, you feed them, and therefore that mitzvah is mechaper for you. Okay, now the Gemara refers back to our Mishnah where we had seen that the mizbechos, both the copper one that was in the Mishkan and the gold one, which was always inside for Ketores, they do not be mekabel tumah. So we had seen two opinions in the Mishnah, why not? Rav Elazar said because it's called Adama. So the Gemara says that the outer Mizbeach is explicitly called Adama. The inner one, right, it says Mizbeach Adama Tasili. The inner one is never called Adama, but it is linked to the outer one by a pasuk in Bamidbar, which says Hashulchan v'hamenorah v'hamizbechos. It says the Mizbechos. The fact that it lists the two of them together makes them defined together, and therefore they have the same halacha, and they're both not Mekabel Tumah. Now, the Chachamim in our Mishnah said that the reason it's not Mekabel Tumah is because they're plated. So I'm going to ask, what do you mean? Plating makes it a metal kli. It makes it more likely to be Mekabel Tumah. How does it make sense to say it's not Mekabel Tumah because it's plated with metal? Gemara says the Chachamim meant something else. Two explanations. First explanation is that the Chachamim meant that it is Mekabel Tumah. They argued on Rav Elazar and they said that the Mizbechos are Mekabel Tumah because they are plated. Second explanation is that they are saying to Rav Elazar, why do you need to come up with the pasuk that calls it Adama? Why don't you just say it's not Mekabel Tumah because it's something which is made out of wood? Oh, must be that you think the wood doesn't help because it's plated. Well, the fact that it's plated is not a problem because the plating is batel to the kli. And that's what they mean to say. Because it's plated, they mean, because it's plated is why you're going to another pasuk? I disagree, and I hold that the fact that it's plated is not a need for another source because the plating is batel to the wood. Okay, the Gemara concludes the Masechta with a bit of a Gadata. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yavo, the name of Rabbi Elazar, Talmid Chacham, is not affected by the fires of Gehenna, the fires of hell. And you learn that as Kavchamer from the salamander. A salamander was a creature which was born from a flame which burned for 7 years. We know, says the Gemara, that somebody who smears his skin with the blood of the salamander is impervious to flame. Talmid Chachamim, therefore, that their entire body is flame, as it says, Halokai Devarai Ke'esh Ne'om Hashem. Therefore, they are certainly not susceptible to any fire, and certainly not the fire of Gehenna. Now, says the Gemara further, Rish Lakish says, actually, the fires of Gehenna do not affect anybody, not even the sinners of Israel. And that's a kavchamer from the Mizbeach Hazav, the golden Mizbeach Hazav, which is what we've just been discussing. Mizbeach Hazav just had a thin layer the size of 1 dinar of gold over it, and still fire burned on it for years and did not burn through the gold, it did not make the gold be affected. Certainly, Klal Yisrael that are filled with mitzvos, like a pomegranate, will not be affected by any fire. How do you know that Klal Yisrael are filled with mitzvos like a pomegranate? That's from the pasuk in Shir Hashirim that says, "Kefela harimon rakosech," like a slice of pomegranate is your head, and that's not read as rekosech but rekonim shebach. Those that are empty within you, those that are empty, the emptiest ones, the sinners of Israel, are still filled with mitzvahs like a rimon, and therefore certainly they should not be affected by the fires of Gehenna. Hadron alach, Mesachas Chagiga, v'hadrach alon.